Sorry. Hi, I'm Megan Fitzpatrick. I'm editor at Lost Art Press, and I teach a lot of woodworking classes, all of which involve dovetails. And I like to lay out dovetails with dividers. I've written about this a number of times, but this is so much easier to show than it is to put into words, so I'm going to show you how we do it. And I have dividers, two sets, set up here already, but I'm going to walk through this sort of as if they weren't set. So the first pair is set for the half pin here at the edge of this board that's already marked. And you'll see it's not actually half the size of a pin, but it is half of a pin. It's straight on one side, it's angled on the other. So the first thing I'm going to do with this half pin setting is stab in at each end of my board. And I try to keep it centered. Honestly, the reason I keep it centered is if I mismark something by mistake, my first ones are all down the middle, then I'll move to the back and mark there. If I mess up a second time, I'll move to the front and mark there. It makes it easier just to see what's what. So I do try to keep things centered on my first go round, and hopefully I don't have to use my own little trick system to figure it out a second time. So my second ones are set to mark out the size of my tails, but I also have, just for fun here, a third set of dividers that we're going to use to show you how I got that setting. You'll see this setting is the size of a tail plus a pin, but how did I get there? Well, I kind of just walked it out. And the way we do that is I sort of guess at the setting of my second set of dividers. I'm going to drop one of the legs into this half pin hole that I've already stabbed. I'm going to walk my way down this board, turning it every time I go. I want 4 tails, so I have to walk this down 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. You can see where I've crossed over on my 4th turn from this half pin hole to this leg of the dividers ends up being the size of the top of my pin. So if we look at my other board that's already marked out, what we're talking about is the size that we see here. Well, that is pretty big, and it's almost as big as the size of the tail itself. That's a very continental look. It is in fact quite strong, but it looks really weird to my eye, and it also makes it pretty hard to figure out what's waist and what's not waist. So we can close these down a little, and I actually closed them down a lot. Let's see where we are now. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now from here to here, this hole to this leg is the size of the top of the pin. If I were doing a really small box, a presentation box, a jewelry box, that might be a good size. For this piece, which is actually a skirt for a tool chest, that looks a little puny to me. It would be strong enough, but it doesn't visually look strong enough. So I actually want something that is closer to that size, so from here to here, which is what I have my other set of dividers set for. So I'm going to set this set aside now, put that set aside, pick up the ones that are set, and again, you can see it's the size of one tail and the top of the pin. So I'm going to drop one leg into my half pin hole. This time as I walk down, I'm going to stab into the board. So 1, 2, 3, and then my 4th turn, I pick it up, I drop it in the other hole at the other end, and walk my way back down. I'm trying to keep it fairly centered. So by using the same setting on all of my dovetails for a given piece or for a set of drawers or whatever, I only have to think about it and do the settings one time. Then I can just pick these up and do all my other corners and not really have to think about it. And the less I have to think, the better chance I have of getting it right. So I'm ready to set these aside. And now I'll pick up my dovetail marker, and I'm using our 1 to 6 setting here. I just like the way that looks. It's fairly traditional. I'm kind of traditional. So I drop a pencil. These are my tails. I cut tails first, and I always mark those out with a pencil. The second cuts I mark out with a knife, but first ones use a pencil. So now you can see I've marked one big dovetail, and that just keeps me going in the right direction. I don't know why, but it works for me. Drop my pencil into the hole, pull it back. And honestly, if you're off just a hair, like if I don't pull it over as far one time, you won't see that difference when they go together. So I'm not too anal retentive about it. Once I've marked these out, I'll cut them. And I'm not all that anal retentive about this cut either, because my second cuts are the ones that have to match the first ones. The first ones just have to be cut square across the top. Because you can see I got off of my hole a little bit here since I'm marking upside down and backwards, and that's okay. But most important, truly, as you get started, is to mark your waist so that you don't cut the wrong half. And sometimes I like to draw in the baseline too, because my eyes are getting old, and as you cope out the waist, it helps you get down to the bottom. So that is how you do it. It's much more simple than it looks like when you read about it on paper.